Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. I feel honored to be in your midst and dearly wish we could all be together in person this morning. Over the last year, many people all over the world, and I'm sure in Westchester as well, have experienced so much uncertainty and loss, and I yearn to hold each of you close and extend my arms to all of you in respect for whatever joys and sorrows you may bring today. We are not alone. Our opening words this morning are the first and fourth principles of Unitarian Universalism, around which I have endeavored to organize today's service. The first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The fourth principle is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. May everything we think, say, and do together today honor these and all the principles of Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Congregation of Westchester and our online worship service. My name is Chris Hyson, and I'm a lay leader in the congregation. Our minister, Reverend Dan Schatz, is on leave this week, and as such, we are pleased to welcome Reverend Steve Brown, all the way from Arizona, to lead our service this morning. Steve was born in Tucson, grew up on a cattle ranch in the Santa Rita Mountains near the Mexican border, and before the COVID pandemic, divided his time among Tucson, Cape Cod, and Brisbane, Australia, where his daughter Amelia and her family live. After graduating from Yale in 1971 with a major in African American studies, he and his wife Alice lived for many years in Manchester, Vermont, and then in Craigville Village on Cape Cod. In 1988, Steve received a Master's of Arts degree in pastoral ministry with a focus on education from Boston College, and was commissioned as a minister of healing and reconciliation. Since then, he has pursued his vocation in both public and private sectors through Commonwealth Solutions, a consulting firm that catalyzes relationships that promote human dignity as the foundation of human rights and public health. Steve has written and published several books of fiction set in San Quino County, a fictitious locale in the Sonoran Desert. Now semi-retired, he brings his vocation to a community-based effort to establish the Desert Sage School, the first Waldorf-inspired public high school in Tucson. I'd also like to mention that Steve holds a special place in my heart. 20 years ago this June, he performed the marriage ceremony for Sarah and me. In addition to Reverend Steve, I'd also like to welcome any other visitors to our online service this morning. We hope you'll have a chance to get to know us and us to get to know you. You can say hello in the comments of the service or send an email to welcome@ucwc.org. We hope that you will join also for our online social hour. The link and password are in connections, and we'll put them in the comments for the service and on the screen at the end of the service. Unitarian Universalism holds that great good comes from wide diversity. So whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your heritage, and from wherever your beliefs spring, we are pleased that you are here. Let us walk a while together. As a please do check connections for our online calendar and for various announcements about online events that are going on throughout the upcoming weeks. Our chalice lighting today is from Sarah Alden Ripley. The line in life, nature, science, philosophy, religion constantly returns into itself. The opposite poles become one when the circle is completed. All truth revolves around one center. All is a manifestation of one law. I invite you now to join in at home for our first hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Please now join in at home for our Unison affirmation. We gather, aspiring to be a thriving, caring, and welcoming community that supports each person's spiritual journey, embraces diversity, challenges us to live responsibly, and is a catalyst for a just and compassionate world. I know many of you attended our virtual budget town hall last. It was good to see so many smiling faces there. One of the things that makes our faces smile is that we have enough money to do what we do, to run our services and our religious education programs, to engage in social justice activities, and to reach out to our communities in so many ways. As we give today, I hope we will be as generous as we are able within our means. While we're online, you can donate on the web or by text or by app or by mailing in a good old-fashioned check, where you can add something to the pledge that you pay each month. Thank you for your generosity in every form. We will now receive our morning offering.
For those among us who are young or young at heart, I invite you to remember the story of Pinocchio. The story was originally a play written by the Italian playwright Carlo Collodi, first performed way back in 1881, and then rewritten as a novel in 1883. In the story, a wooden puppet comes to life as a complicated character, just like all of us, lovable some of the time, but sometimes really naughty. But he's made of wood. His creator became so attached to Pinocchio that he changed the ending of the story entirely when it transitioned from the stage to a novel. So when this wooden puppet mysteriously comes to life, he's basically a good child, but he gets tempted to misbehave, and especially to tell lies. And when he lies, his nose grows longer, and the longer it grows, the more embarrassed he becomes and the more lies he tells. And then his nose gets even longer. So Pinocchio cries and cries because he feels so sad about his nose. And then he runs away and joins the circus, which, as you can imagine, creates even more problems. Have you ever felt like Pinocchio? Felt like folks around you didn't really understand you? Treated you like a puppet, like they were something they could control with strings, and you wanted to let them know that you're real? Well, when I was in third grade, I got sent in from recess for misbehaving on the playground. And when my teacher asked me why I was coming in, I was ashamed and I told a lie. I said I was feeling sick. But later she found out why I had really been sent in, and I was even in more trouble. So I was punished, and a note was sent home to my parents, and everyone in my class found out about it. And guess what they called me? Pinocchio. I felt so ashamed. Has something like this ever happened to any of you? Maybe you told a little lie, and then to keep from getting caught, maybe you thought you had to tell another one a little bit bigger, and then even bigger, until they all added up and something really bad happened to you. I don't know any of you, of course, but I've been a teacher for many years, and I can promise you, any good teacher won't punish you for telling the truth, as scary as that might be. And each of you influences lots of other children too. So by telling the truth, you not only keep yourself out of big trouble, avoid feeling ashamed of yourself, you might also change your friends' lives for the better too, so that they may not tell lies and they may not get in big trouble. So it's as scary as it might be. Remember the story of Pinocchio. When he finally learned to tell the truth, a magical character with turquoise colored hat rescues Pinocchio and turns him into a real boy, a fully human being. Now, you and I probably can't count on a magic character with a turquoise hat to rescue us, but we can count on each other to help us grow stronger and more courageous every day by telling the truth. And that's what makes us fully human. I believe in all of you. And I have a feeling that you will show up for your friends when they're tempted to tell a little lie, or a bigger lie, or even a great big lie, and help them tell the truth so they never end up getting in really big trouble like Pinocchio did. That's what friends are for. So, after this time together with all ages, I invite us all to sing together our next hymn, For the Earth Forever Turning.
For the earth for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth.
I'm a great reader, as those of you who know me realize, and I'm the kind of person who reads tons of stuff and I write in the margins and I underline and I highlight and do all those terrible things. But that's how I keep track of what I'm reading. And so the two readings that I selected for us for today speak to these ideas of dignity of truth. The first one is from this journal, Health and Human Rights, and it's by Jonathan Mann, and it's about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so I'm going to read from this journal. The modern human rights revolution emerges boldly from the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And then Jonathan Mann goes on to analyze that first part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And he writes, an appreciation of the role of dignity in creating, sustaining, and constraining health is currently on the cusp of thinking in both public health and human rights. For it is increasingly evident that violations of dignity are pervasive events with potentially severe and sustained negative effects on physical, mental, and social well-being. Just as in the microbial world, in which new discoveries, Ebola virus, hantavirus, toxic shock syndrome, Legionnaire's disease, AIDS, have become the norm, so exploration is needed in the larger world of human suffering and well-being. Injuries to individual and collective dignity may represent a hitherto unrecognized pathogenic force with a destructive capacity towards physical, mental, and social well-being at least equal to that of viruses or bacteria. The health consequences of dignity violations may not manifest themselves simply as hypertension, asthma, or allergies. Rather, a more ecological AIDS-like analogy in which dignity violations are understood to reduce resistance or the capacity to respond adaptively to a wide range of environmental stresses may be more useful to guide future research in this area. To summarize that, when anyone offends our dignity, it makes us sick. My second reading this morning is from this book, Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation by Reverend Angel Kyodo Williams. And this reading speaks to truth. The very first thing the Buddha taught, the first noble truth, was that we have to come to terms with the fact that the nature of life is to experience confusion and discomfort. That by the fact of our birth, old age, sickness, and death are in our future, and we are thus inclined to suffer. In our culture, so much is oriented toward moving away from that experience and finding ways to deaden it, whether that's through addictions to Facebook, television, drugs, or alcohol. You have to figure out, what place are you not feeling? What part of you are you rejecting? What aspect are you not loving? What truth are you not willing to accept? It's easier to leave these parts aside, at least to our conscious mind, than to even begin to consider if we will be able to survive the grief of facing them. It's easier to just claim our progressiveness, to claim our enlightened hearts and spirits, or our radicalness and commitment to the struggle. So you can't possibly be racist or sexist or transphobic or think your spirituality is more real or you're just better than to actually have your despair show up for you. In truth, we have to integrate our wounds into our understanding of who we are and what we are really capable of, so that we can be whole human beings. And that ends our readings for this morning. The seed for this morning's sermon title was planted during a day-long retreat of the board of directors of Desert Sage School in Tucson, Arizona, where I live and where I'm joining you from today. This retreat was organized and facilitated by Venus Chene Kuya, the vice president of the Desert Sage School Board, a brilliant young Black woman who brings her gifts to Tucson, who teaches theater arts in the Tucson public schools. Chene grew up in Germany in Tucson, and I've known her for several years. And I believe that teachers like Chene embody the future of American education. And I have faith that this future is secure because of people like her. One of Chene's gifts is her ability to explore in depth and communicate effectively something as complex as a 4-year high school curriculum in a few simple words that everyone intuitively understands. For example, the dignity of truth. Our retreat helped us define this as our school's fundamental why for establishing the first public Waldorf-inspired high school in Southern Arizona. The readings that I just shared explain my understanding of the terms dignity and truth. I believe that both dignity and truth are under siege in our world today, and I think it's up to thoughtful, caring people everywhere to translate the core principles of Unitarian Universalism and other time-tested faith systems into tangible action to assure that the dignity of truth becomes the foundation of our shared future as human beings. Artists like Chene, writers and poets, musicians, painters and sculptors are the creative souls leading humanity beyond the humdrum of daily life, where dignity and truth are struggling to survive, toward a world community characterized by timeless dignity and authentic truth embodied in their art. Down deep, all human beings can be moved by art, and indeed, all of us have the capacity to create art. Let me suggest 3 areas of focus where people like you and me can become aware of the challenges the dignity of truth might face in our communities and world. 3 areas where we can mobilize change, all conveniently starting with the letter P, like Pinocchio. Personal politics, preachers in the pulpits, and pundits in the press. First, personal politics. If you were around in the 1960s and 1970s or have studied this era, perhaps as a political science major, you'll recall the slogan made famous by Carol Hanisch in her essay entitled, "The Personal is Political." Politics is about far more than the polarized bases of America's traditional political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, who drive us nuts 24/7 with propaganda and ideology, the tiniest fraction of what is really meant by politics. The word politics comes from the Greek word polis, meaning city, extended to the word citizen. In its deeper form, politics implies all the activities of people who are in relationship with one another. It's not about you or me or any individual. It's about the relationships that connect you and me. Only these relationships are truly real, powerful enough to embody the dignity of truth. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "Nonviolence is the relentless pursuit of truthful ends through moral means." King, of course, did not invent the importance of the correspondence between the ends we seek and the means we employ. This idea can be found in writings as diverse as the prophet Isaiah and Shakespeare, and many others who consistently warned against cutting moral corners and our passion to solve vexing problems. Shakespeare gave us tragic characters like Macbeth, who succumbed to temptation just like we modern folks do. That's why Shakespeare's plays are still so popular. Isaiah summed up the politics of Jerusalem 2,600 or so years ago when he proclaimed, "Truth stumbles in the streets, and honesty has been outlawed." And so here we are in 2021, once again witnessing carnage in the Middle East and horrific political leaders wreaking havoc all over the world, preventing so many of their citizens from becoming fully human through their practice of the false belief that the ends justify the means. Everyone loses in a politics based on humiliation and lies. People can and should disagree heartily with one another, but as long as they commit to being honest and in respectful relationships with one another, dignity of truth will endure. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote in his Nobel Prize speech, one word of truth outweighs the whole world. So my second area of focus is preachers in the pulpit. The word pulpit comes from the Latin meaning platform or scaffold. You may be familiar with the old Unitarian hymn, "Once to Every Soul and Nation," and the lines for that hymn: "Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own." These words were written by James Russell Lowell, a Boston Unitarian abolitionist, part of an 18-verse poem he penned in 1845 to protest the Mexican-American War that was set to music a generation later. Just like in the antebellum period here in the United States, lots of what is being preached from the pulpits of intolerant, judgmental elements of various religions today doesn't embody the dignity of truth. Efforts to rewrite the history of the Civil War, efforts to justify anti-Semitism with scripture. Too often these are nothing more than unbridled bigotry, nationalism, violence, and calls to dehumanizing all others who don't hew to a specific dogma or doctrine. For example, the marginalization and exclusion of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender persons from the pulpits of many houses of worship dehumanizes and humiliates a whole group of human beings. Exactly what Jonathan Mann identified as deleterious to health in this morning's reading. Exclusion makes us sick. As has been the case for thousands of years, religion is still being used as an excuse to justify oppression, intolerance, and hatred, to increase the concentration of power and wealth of those at the top of patriarchal, hierarchical systems, ironically at the expense of the marginalized communities that founded most enduring world religions. So this brings me to my third focus area, the pundits of the press. along with freedom of and from religion, the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees freedom of the press. Since this Constitution was ratified, freedom of the press has been interpreted by the courts to be the freedom to lie and humiliate, as well as the freedom to inform and enlighten. Throughout the world today, social media combines with precisely targeted newspaper articles and pundits speaking out on privately funded or state-sponsored radio and television networks, promoting violence against legitimate ethical journalists, such as Jamal Khashoggi, who dared to speak the truth with dignity. This effort has betrayed freedom of the press by reinforcing whatever their targeted audience chooses to believe is true, no matter how irrational or paranoid it might be. Shades of Orwell's book, 1984. But truth is not for sale. This practice is what former Vice President Al Gore called the assault on reason. And it's evidenced by the decline of the cultivation of critical thinking skills in so many educational institutions over the last generation. The result is that students all over the world are manipulated by dishonest, power-hungry pundits of the press, representing every imaginable falsehood. For example, the Arizona legislature recently passed a law requiring all schools in Arizona to present both sides of any issue that might be thought to be controversial. Scientists may tell us the earth is round, kids, but if there are those who believe otherwise, in Arizona schools, both sides should get equal time. This is a challenging time to be a teacher in my home state, and indeed in much of America and the world. So, what are we to do? How can we embrace the dignity of truth? How can we tap into the power we need to overcome personal humiliation as a political strategy, to overcome preachers who hijack pulpits to dehumanize and exclude whole categories of people, to overcome dishonest pundits who abuse the freedom of the press? Fortunately, during our Desert Sage School Retreat Day, Chene Kuya led us through a series of inspiring activities to answer this question. It is summed up by one word: art. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote in his Nobel Prize address, and I quote, "Art has always won its fight against lies, and it always will win. Everyone can see this, no one can deny it. The lie can resist many things in this world, but it cannot resist art. Once the lie is shattered, the nakedness of violence will be revealed in all its repulsiveness. Violence will become decrepit and collapse. That is why I think, my friends, that we are capable of helping the world in its agonized testing hour." End quote. Throughout the ages, art has been acknowledged as the fountainhead of dignity of truth. Gandhi subtitled his autobiography, "The Story of My Experiments with Truth." Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn concludes, "When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know." In the Unitarian tradition, creation itself is celebrated as the ultimate exquisite work of art. People might identify an artist or a category of artists in many ways, but true art transcends all words. Think for a moment of an experience you have had during your lifetime when art that you created or experienced truly transformed your way of relating to creation. The possibilities are infinite, and that's the dignity of truth that art embodies. Now, all human beings are born with the potential to both create and to appreciate art. And art, as I said, takes an infinite number of forms: dance, theater, music, visual arts, literature, the list is endless. how do we narrow this list down enough to be useful in overcoming the assault on the dignity of truth we see in today's world? Let's briefly consider contemporary art that speaks to genuine injustices in ways that reach beyond our rational mind and touch our souls. Think for just a moment about movies. Remember that powerful scene in the movie, A Few Good Men, when Jack Nicholson's character snarls, "You can't handle the truth." That scene touched me, changed my view of truth. During the pandemic, movies kept hope alive for me. The play Hamilton reached deep into American history and into my heart too, as it exposed truths about the past and the present that many in America have ignored or denied. Other contemporary movies like Penguin Bloom or Promising Young Woman or My Octopus Teacher explore truth in ways that pundits, preachers, and politicians can't approach. The power of art transcends the attempts of those who would destroy the dignity of truth. Unlike much of the transformational art of previous generations, which was often created by individual artists, ranging from visual artists like Picasso to theater artists like Eve Ensler, in the 21st century, emerging art forms in movies, theater, dance, and musical compositions are often created by large teams, sometimes hundreds of artists working seamlessly together, like the Pixar team at Disney, inspired by their shared experience of deep truths to pass along their creative energy to our generation through their collaborative art. Creating a new school together is an art form. By inviting me to participate in your worship today, you at Westchester Church have invested in Desert Sage School's capacity to inspire and cultivate transformative art with Tucson's children. You have reinforced the dignity of truth in one small corner of creation. As we all go out into the world, I encourage you to search for and find the dignity of truth. Wherever you encounter the letter P, think of Pinocchio, of personal politics, of pulpits and preachers and the press and pundits. Take a deep breath and stand up, speak out, and create and celebrate art yourselves in ways big and small on behalf of the dignity of truth. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you this morning. So may it be.
Now is the time in our service when we share our joys and sorrows with our cards of sharing. Please sing at home, "There is a love holding me."
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding me. I rest in this love.
Of sharing. Our son graduated from Westchester University with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. It's been a longer journey for most. It's been a longer journey for him to reach this goal than it has for many, making the accomplishment all the sweeter. Thank you.
Again, we sing, "There is a love holding us."
There is a love holding me. I rest in this love.
Please join in now at home for our final hymn, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll be a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stands her people. Oh, come, build the land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Our closing words this morning are from a traditional Aboriginal Australian blessing, credited to Burnham Burnham, an Australian Aboriginal leader. Early in the service, Chris lit the chalice, and shortly that candle will be extinguished. But as you go out into the world, remember these closing words from the Aboriginal elder. May the fire be in our thoughts, making them true, good, and just. May the fire be in our eyes. May it open our eyes to share what is good in life. May the fire be on our lips so that we may speak the truth in kindness, that we may serve and encourage others. May the fire be in our ears. We pray that we may hear with a deep, deep listening so that we may hear the flow of water and of all creation. May the fire be in our arms and hands so that we may be of service and build up love. May the fire protect us from all violence. May the fire be in our whole being, in our legs and in our feet, enabling us to walk the earth with reverence and care, so that we may walk in the ways of goodness and truth and be protected from walking away from what is true. Amen.